Someone call them ahead. We have a stray. Despite the din of the workshop, the foreman's voice was clear as Aber Morgan hobbled past, her prosthetic leg plainly visible beneath her worn jeans. Arm turned to the welfare office favorite. Another one screamed, causing cruel laughter from the entire construction site. Eva clenched her navy cap tighter, her chin became firmer, and she set her gaze resolutely on the way ahead. She didn't stop or flinch. They did not realize that she had once carried wounded men through the hail of bullets, that her limp was a result of her experiences in the fire, and was not a pretense motivated by pity. Minutes later, the construction site fell silent. 3 black SUVs roared in and blocked the driveway. 7 Navy SEALs stepped out in perfect formation, their faces unreadable, their boots determined. No one knew what they were here for, but as they approached Ava, every construction worker froze. And for the first time that day, no one laughed. Once Ava Morgan left the Marine Corps, she didn't return to the sights and sounds of parades or celebrations. Instead, she found herself back in a quiet, unassuming apartment located behind a rundown strip mall in East Houston. It wasn't much. A small apartment, 2 rooms, a narrow balcony, and neighbors who rarely, if ever, looked up. Still, it was her sanctuary, a place where no questions were asked, and the silence was as constant and unbroken as the quiet ticking of her wall clock. Every Tuesday, she followed the same routine. Having packed her olive green duffel bag, she then slung it over her shoulder and subsequently boarded bus number 77 en route to the VA medical center. Among her possessions within the bag were her medications, a notepad brimming with fond memories, and a faded, well-used and sun-bleached navy cap, which she had carefully placed at the bottom. She'd never even worn it, yet she couldn't bring herself to leave it behind. That cap had survived 2 deployments and 3 firefights. It was the last fragment of a life she no longer mentioned or discussed. As a result of an improvised explosive device, i.e. explosion outside of Thalca, her left leg was amputated below the knee. It was subsequently replaced with a state-of-the-art prosthetic. Its surface was matte black and functional, unobtrusive. The quiet, intentional sound of her footsteps, each step creating a soft click, echoed on it. To some, the sound was strange and unfamiliar. To Ava, however, it was a rhythm. She saw it as a reminder to herself that she was still moving forward in her life. The neighbors knew her only vaguely. Quiet lady, they would say, always polite, always alone. Kids at times stared at her leg or asked quite impolite questions, assuming she was deaf and incapable of understanding. She never answered. She wasn't there to explain herself. At night, memories returned like uninvited guests. She remembered the deafening shriek of the mortar shells, the crackling static from the malfunctioning radios, and the sickening pressure of her wounded comrade's blood on her hands. After midnight had passed, she remained seated by the window, watching the way the spotlights filtered through the blinds like the searchlights used to scan an area. In her apartment, a quiet stillness reigned, but within her mind, the battles raged on. But she never once complained, and never spoke about the things that she had lost. Ava Morgan did not flaunt her pain, but carried it with quiet strength. She wore it like armor, silent, invisible, and unwavering. Her war was over, but the discipline remained. Although the world had, in her opinion, forgotten the extent of her contribution, she kept the memory alive in her heart every single day. The midday Houston sun showed no mercy. It beat down on the sprawling construction site, casting sharp shadows on stacks of cinder blocks, scaffolding, and half-demolished walls. The air above the asphalt shimmered, filled with red dust and the constant hammering. Trucks rumbled in and out. Sparks flew from the welding torches. Voices echoed above the cavern of progress. Ava Morgan walked along the cracked sidewalk that bordered the grounds. It was easy to distinguish her footsteps, and with each step her prosthetic leg quietly clicked. She had traversed this route countless times, en route to the V Clinic, which was situated just 5 blocks away. Worn jeans, faded green t-shirt, and tanned Zealand skin. A woman on a covert mission, largely unnoticed by the public, but today someone finally paid attention to her actions. A voice called from behind the fence, taking a wrong turn toward the welfare office. "Honey!" The words hung in the air for a fleeting moment, a fraction of a second, before they erupted into laughter. Sharp, youthful, and cruel. Ava didn't slow her pace. Even though her jaw was clenched tightly, her gaze remained steadfastly forward. On the scaffolding on the 2nd floor, 3 workers in neon vests leaned forward and nudged each other. One man imitated her limp, while another fell dramatically, feigning a scream before erupting into a hearty fit of laughter. She likely got the discount on her leg at Goodwill, one of them speculated. The leader, the talker, stood at ground level. Rick Tanner, foreman of the attraction, was a broad-shouldered man with a red face, constantly blinking under a baseball cap smeared with sweat. He chewed on a toothpick with the same intensity he used on his clipboard. When Ten saw Ava, he didn't see an opportunity for pity, but rather a chance for a real breakthrough. "Some idiot just rang the fire department," he roared so loud that it was audible to every member of the team. "Looks like one of their wind-up toys broke loose." The workers howled. Eva's grip on her navy cap tightened. She kept walking, shoulders square and head held high. She didn't stop or flinch. She was under enemy fire. That was noise. Nearby on the sidewalk, a teenager, most likely 17 years old, was already making a video. She held her phone up, grinning. "This is going viral," she whispered to her friend next to her. "Wait for TikTok to see the RoboCop lady." No one intervened. No one told them to stop. Several workers shifted uncomfortably, but no one said anything. The deputy site manager himself didn't take any action. He just stood there with his arms crossed, watching. Ava didn't scream. She didn't answer. But her silence wasn't weakness. It was restraint. What lies behind this silence is years of discipline, pain, and the sacrifices made. Inside me, and not tightened, not out of shame, but from a profound and ancient tiredness, a weight settling deep within. It wasn't the first time. It wouldn't be the last. Rick Tanner wasn't finished yet. "I bet she never experienced anything," he sneered. "She probably fell off a bar stool in San Diego." More laughter, more eyes turned to her. But Eva never looked back. Gently, she placed her hand inside the collar of her shirt, softly touching the identification tag situated on her chest. The metal felt warm against her skin. Her thumb gently rubbed across the faded engraving, her name, blood type, and the designation of her branch. It reminded her, you persevered. You served. You mattered. While she continued her walk down the sidewalk, the spot taunted her from behind. Particles of dust stuck tightly to her boots, and sweat was trickling down her neck. She didn't go any faster. She didn't go any slower. She reminded herself with every step why she was unwilling to grant them the satisfaction of witnessing their destruction. She had almost reached the corner when something unusual caught her eye out of the corner of her eye. A black SUV was parked half a block away. The windows were tinted. The engine was roaring. Someone inside was watching. She had no idea yet, but the wheels of justice were already turning. Just beyond the construction site, in the shade of a sycamore tree, was a black Chevy Suburban. The engine was idling quietly. The tint on the windshield was just sufficient to effectively conceal the man inside. But he wasn't hiding. He was waiting. Logan sat at the wheel, his elbow resting comfortably on the steering wheel, his gaze intently fixed on the dust-filled chaos that was unfolding 30 meters ahead of him. He watched Ava Morgan hobble past the gate, surrounded by high and low laughter. His weather-beaten, inscrutable face remained impassive, however. His jaw was slightly tightened, a deliberate act. The navy cap in her hand, the distinct mechanical click of her prosthetic, and her deliberate refusal to turn, all these small details spoke volumes. Logan remembered everything, not just this moment, but a war from years ago. Reaching down, he grasped his forearm and meticulously pulled his sleeve cuff upward just far enough to reveal the carefully designed tattoo permanently inked onto his skin. A gold trident surrounded by an eagle and anchor, a Navy SEAL's insignia, faded by time, but still unmistakable. Still deserved. The memory resurfaced with such clarity that it was sharper and more vivid than any film. Lollipops, dust, fire, bullets, and blood. Logan's team was stuck behind a wrecked convoy. 3 civilians were bleeding to death, and then Ava Morgan was sprinting through smoke and sniper fire across open terrain. Not once, not twice, not 3 times. Every time she went back, she carried someone. She didn't come all the way back on the 3rd run. She never asked for thanks. He never participated in the medal ceremonies. Logan did. He stood there in full dress uniform, accepting commendations. But he never forgot who made it possible for him to be there in the first place. Now I must witness her public ridicule, observing how a charitable case, something needing serious attention and care, is dismissed as a joke. It unleashed something within him that had been lying dormant for many years. He picked up his phone. No hesitation, no doubts. "It's me, Beck," he said in a low, determined voice. "Send the convoy. It's time." He concluded the call and set the phone onto the dashboard. In that very moment, Logan Beck wasn't only a retired SEAL, he was also a brother in arms, and absolutely no one ridiculed a Marine who had carried their wounded, bloodied body from the depths of hell. Certainly not without having to learn the hard way the profound and true meaning of honor. Ava Morgan saw the light of day for the first time in a remote corner of Kentucky, a place where unpaved roads outnumbered the paved ones, and her days began before sunrise, accompanied by the unmistakable sounds of roosters and tractors. Her family possessed a small, struggling farm outside of Richmond Livestock, specializing in soybean cultivation and generating just enough income to cover their basic necessities. She grew up experiencing the grueling demands of early morning labor, developing a quiet sense of pride in completing tasks, even when unrecognized. Her father was a man of few words, yet possessing remarkably steady hands. Her mother taught her valuable skills, sewing, horseback riding, and repairing a broken fence before she even reached the age of 12. However, by the time Ava reached her 18th birthday, she had already decided that the farm wasn't meant to be her future. The land tired. Her parents were getting older. She was unwilling to let her life shrink to the same state of chaos she had been struggling through since childhood. So she entered the Marine Corps recruiting office with nothing but her mom and a high school diploma. Boot camp didn't prove to be the shock she anticipated, not for a girl who'd been laboriously hauling hay bales since she was just a little girl. Eva excelled. Although she wasn't loud, she possessed a sharp mind, unwavering discipline, and a fiercely protective nature toward those around her. She didn't crave recognition, she craved purpose. She had become the sort of Marine that commanded the unwavering trust of her fellow Marines by the time of her second deployment. In Falcha, during her third month of patrol, everything changed. A convoy she was supposed to be protecting was delivering medical supplies through a densely populated urban area. The explosive device was buried deep under the asphalt and was detonated by remote control just as the lead vehicle crossed the intersection. The blast shattered glass in the drum cases, throwing a ham onto its side and igniting it, and she didn't wait. Eva ran headlong into the smoke and shrapnel. Working swiftly amidst the wreckage of the day's event, she managed to extricate one of the vans used by the rescue teams. She carefully carried a screaming civilian helper to the safety of the median strip. Then, during her third trip back, she stretched out a hand to a Marine who was pinned underneath some mangled metal. That's when the second explosion hit. She regained consciousness at a military hospital located in Ramstein, Germany. Her left leg was gone below the knee. She'd earned the Silver Star, the Purple Heart, and, judging from her records, the enduring respect of everyone in her unit. Still, metal offers no shield against the stillness that descends upon one after one's duty ends. My return home was comparable to entering a different war, one characterized by silence and a chilling cold. Before they even glanced at her resume, the employers saw the prosthetic. One manager quietly murmured, "We're concerned about liability." Another said simply, "This job requires long periods of standing." Just before he shoved her file aside, it was clear that they didn't care about Falawaka. They made no effort to inquire about what she had done or the individual she had rescued. To them, she was perceived as a risk, a constant reminder, a walking history they were keen to avoid hearing. And so the young woman who had once escaped a raging fire had adapted to a life where anticipating stares, unnecessary questions, or even worse, expressions of pity was a daily occurrence, even when simply entering a grocery store. The stifling heat on the construction site had reached its peak, a palpable presence that caused sweat to shine on sun-baked foreheads. The metallic scent of dust and diesel fumes filled the air thick and heavy. The remnants of their earlier laughter faintly echoed across the stage, a muted and scattered sound. While some of the workers had returned to their tasks with hammers, the majority remained focused on the sidewalk, almost expecting Morgan to turn and deliver a stinging retort. But she didn't. Instead, another voice intervened. Without any warning whatsoever, a low, ominous rumble vibrated through the street. This was not the sound of yet another dump truck or cement mixer making its way along, but the deep, unmistakable rumble of military engines. At the bend, 3 black SUVs appeared, traveling in a manner that looked suspiciously like a patrol unit. Their windows were tinted pitch black. The paint was polished, but undamaged. They didn't sprint. They didn't slow down. They just drove up with consistent precision and came to a stop perfectly aligned before the construction site's main gate, thus completely blocking the main entrance to the site. The construction workers stopped working. Every single one of them. Someone dropped a wrench. Another took off his hard hat. not knowing why. At first, the doors on the driver's side opened. Subsequently, the rear doors opened. 7 men stepped out at once. Their movements were fluid and deliberately practiced. Their lack of complete camouflage or combat gear was readily apparent. However, they possessed an undeniable air of confidence, suggesting that such equipment was unnecessary. Black tactical pants, matching dark shirts, sturdy boots. Some wore sunglasses, some didn't. None of them smiled. They didn't speak or gesture. They looked at each other, just. They meticulously scanned the grounds like soldiers carefully infiltrating a building, measuring angles, assessing potential threats, and memorizing all possible escape routes. The construction workers who had been so loud and boisterous just a few minutes earlier now fell into a silence so profound it was almost deafening. The foreman, Rick Tanner, remained rooted to the spot, his mouth slightly open in a gesture of uncertainty. He was unsure whether this was an official government inspection, a routine safety drill, or something far more serious. There was something different about these men. It was the way they walked. No posturing, no arrogance, just absolute control. Their stance didn't demand space. It commanded. One of them was older than the others, and the leader clearly stepped forward. It was Logan Beck. He had short graying hair, a trident was tattooed on his arms, and a series of coordinates, casual yet ready for use, hung loosely from his belt. He said nothing as he approached the construction site. His focus was not on the equipment, the foreman, or the towering steel beams, but rather elsewhere toward a distant point. His focus was on Ava Morgan, who was now 2 blocks away and hadn't turned around even once. The others lined up behind him, unprompted. No one knew who they were. No one knew why they were there. But as they walked forward in a perfect dip, the laughter from earlier evaporated like steam on asphalt. And for the first time that day, the only sound on the construction site was the wind. With the only sound, that of his boots crunching on the gravel, Lieutenant Logan Beck steadily decreased the distance between himself and the foreman. Rick Tanner, who had been so loud and smug just a few minutes ago, stood awkwardly at the foot of the scaffolding's clipboard, holding it uselessly at his side. Gold had pooled under his arms. His neck had turned red in the sun. Beck stopped less than 2 feet away. He didn't raise his voice. There was no need to. Who just humiliated Sergeant Ava Morgan? Rick blinked. The name must have hit home. He stammered, trying to remain calm. Look, it was just a joke. Okay. Nobody meant it seriously. Beck didn't blink. A joke. He made a small turn, a mere adjustment in his posture, ensuring that everyone within earshot could understand his words clearly. His voice was calm, but each syllable cut through the heavy air with clarity. Sergeant Morgan served 2 combat tours in Iraq. Amidst the sniper fire of Fallujah, she bravely pulled 3 wounded soldiers, including myself, from a burning Humvee. She lost her leg in the process. This is no joke. Silence. Every construction worker froze. Some looked down, others stared in disbelief. Gradually, it became evident to some how significantly the situation had worsened. Rick opened and closed his mouth. The bravado was gone. From the line of SUVs stepped a younger SEAL. Tall basket. His body coiled like a spring. He held up his phone. We recorded everything, he said from the sidewalk. Every word, every laugh, every insult. Rick's face went ashen. If you happen to have forgotten, the young SEAL added, your actions while on duty and on public property making fun of a decorated veteran are unlikely to sit well with your contractor's office. Logan Beck moved closer, his demeanor shifting to a cold, unyielding steeliness. She never requested recognition, nor did she actively pursue attention. As her squad suffered catastrophic injuries, leaving them to bleed out, Eva traversed a kill zone 3 times, a feat most others would have abandoned long before. Beck then stepped forward to address the crowd. They laughed at a woman who has served with greater honor than many men, he declared. A heavy silence descended. As Ava walked away, the rhythmic sound of boots behind her alerted her to approaching footsteps. Logan Beck, accompanied by 6 SEALs, their presence calm and deliberate, closed in on her. The construction site fell silent, an eerie quiet punctuated only by the steady cadence of their footsteps. He stood before her, his eyes reflecting genuine respect, not pity. Permission. To honor you, ma'am, he requested, and then with absolute precision he saluted. His men followed his lead, their salute, mirroring his unwavering respect. Ava responded to their salute not with a display of pride, but with a response rooted in deep-seated instinct. It felt earned. So then, Beck passed her a small coin, the Brotherhood coin of the SEALs. They had it in their hands, but never got it. They were too busy saving lives, but couldn't say it. The video went viral. She pulled me out of a burning hamwee. Words touched millions. The construction management was flooded with complaints. A public apology followed. Rick Tanner was pulled from the project. More important was what happened next. Ava was invited to speak at Roosevelt High School. She had hesitated, but it wasn't about pity, it was about truth. On the speaker's pulse, she said, "Scars don't mean you're broken. They show you've moved on." The students stood up, some with tears in their eyes. A brick with a steel frame was embedded on the construction site. Morgan was built on respect. Not a monument, but visible every day. It became a reminder of honor, courage, and what happens when you decide not to look away. Ava Morgan never wanted to be a symbol, but sometimes life makes of insignia. One day, she was sitting in front of a coffee shop when a little boy with a prosthetic arm approached her. "My mother says I'm like you," he said. "Maybe I can be a hero too." But he leaned forward. "You already are. Every day you get up and keep going." The boy beamed, genuinely moved. Word of the silent encounter spread quickly. Veterans came to touch the memorial stone on the construction site. Schools sent classes, families laid flowers. What began as a mockery became a monument, not just of stone, but of respect. 6 months later, Ava was the keynote speaker at the National Veterans Conference. In the audience was Logan Beck and the boy in the little navy jacket holding Ava's gift of a coin. Ava openly showed off her prosthetic limb. "I used to think honor came from medals," she said. "But true honor is shown when you keep going despite everything." The room held its breath. Courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes it limps. The applause started quietly, then became thunderous. Standing ovations that lasted for minutes. The brick became a target for many. Stories of injured survivors, everyday heroes poured in. A movement was born. With the phrase, "Respect should be louder than laughter." Ava's last words, "Scars are not a flaw. They show that we have survived."